To get started, I just added a clip to my timeline that I'd like to add a smooth, slow motion effect. Let's begin by making sure your clip is selected on the timeline, and then use the Ctrl+R keyboard shortcut to bring up the speed settings in the pop-up. Change the speed to your desired amount. I'll set mine of 50% for half. Now, if I were to leave it like this and hit OK, it'd slow down my video, but since I have 30 FPS footage, putting it down to half speed is going to make it super choppy. So to improve this, let's use Ctrl+R to open up the speed settings again, but this time change the time interpolation drop-down to optical flow, then hit OK. Alright, this is better, but it's still a little choppy since optical flow is a demanding effect. To fix this, make sure your clip is selected. Then go up to Sequence and select Render Selection. It might take a bit to render, but once it does, my playback will be much smoother. Keep in mind that while this worked good for me, if I were to lure this even more to like 20, I'd start noticing ghosting and artificing, since it can only do so much with 30 FPS footage. If I had 60 FPS footage, I could probably get away with going down to 20% though. That's all. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification for watch upcoming video. So, thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a clip to my timeline and I'd like to add a gaming subtitle to it. Let's begin by tapping the T key on your keyboard to select the text tool. Then click where you want to type your text in the preview and type it. Okay, before we style our text, be sure to select the selection tool. Otherwise, the next steps might not work for you. Now, let's go over to Effect Control, and under the Graphics section, expand text. First, let's change the font to something a little nicer. I think the Mo one looks really good, and to resize it, just uses Font Size slider. To move your text, it's easiest to just drag it in the preview frame. Next, we'll click the Stroke checkbox to give it a stroke so it's more readable, and I'll change the color to black so it stands out. To increase the stroke size, just drag the strokes number to the right. I'll put mine around 10. You can also check the shadow box to give it a drop shadow, which looks nicer than just the stroke. And I like setting the shadow's opacity to 100, so it shows more. Okay, that's it for the simple stuff. So let's get this a little pop animation first to make sure the text section is selected. It should be, and in your preview, you'll see this little circular anchor point. Drag the anchor point to the middle of the text, so Premiere knows you want to pop your text in from its middle. Now, back in Effect, Controls position the playhead to where you want to start your animation. Then find the Scale property in the text section and set it to 0. There's a scale in the other sections as well, so make sure you're using the text section one next. Click the stopwatch to create a starting keyframe and move the playhead about 5 to 10 frames forward, depending on the frame array of your footage. I'm using 60 FPS footage, so I'll move mine forward at 10 frames using the right arrow key on my. Okay, now change the scale to 125, which will automatically create a second keyframe. Next, move the playhead 3 to 5 frames forward and set the scale to 100 to create your third keyframe. Now, when I play this back, I have a nice little pop effect. To quickly make additional subtitles, simply hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and drag it to the side to make a duplicate. Now you can edit the copy and have a unique second subtitle that even has the animation from the other one. Alright, that's it for this tutorial. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and like the video. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a video clip to my timeline that I'd like to add. Our rounded corners effect too. First, let's begin by right-clicking inside the project panel and go to New Item Color Matte. The default setting should already match your timeline, so go ahead and hit OK in here. Select the color you'd like for your background. Give your color matte and name if you want. I'll just use the default. Now, drag your video clip up one track on the timeline and then drag your color matte from the project panel under the track below it. And I'll just drag my color matte clips and to extend it duration to match the video clip. Now make sure your video clip on the timeline is selected and over in Effect Controls, decrease its scale so that you can see your color matte behind. Next, go over to the Effects panel and type Roughen Edges into the search box. Drag the Roughen Edges effect onto your top video clip on the timeline. Now over in Effect Controls, you'll see your Roughen Edges effect. First, use this drop-down to set the edge type to cut, then increase the border to 500. Below that, increase the edge sharpness too. And finally, decrease the fractal influence to 0 to round out your corners. Keep in mind that when you play back the preview, the corners will look weird and angular, but when you export it, it'll look curved and normal, so don't worry about it. That's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this smoother reverse effect. To get started, I just added this clip to my timeline that I'd like to add my reverse effect to. Now to begin, drag your video track up so that it's large enough to see the clip's preview image. Then in the clip's top left corner, right-click the little F square, go to Timer Mapping and select. Now you should see this line going through the middle of your clip. So while holding down the Control key on your keyboard, click roughly in the middle of that line. Doing that will create this dash line divider. Drag the line on the right side of that dash divider down to 1%. You might have noticed this little gray marker at the top of the dash line. You'll need to drag its first half to the start of your clip to begin creating them, and then drag the second half up to where you want to start reversing your video. I'll put mine right after we finish going through the tunnel in my video. We don't need any of this footage after the second half of our marker, so make a cut at its position and delete the clip after. Alright, now when I play this back, my speed ramps down, but it's not very smooth. So to fix this, let's right-click our clip and go to Speed/Duration in here. All we're gonna do is change the time interpolation to optical flow. Now we have this red bar over our video indicating that it's not going to play back smoothly. So you'll have to make sure your clip is selected and press the Enter key on your keyboard to render the clip. Okay, this time when I play it back, the speed ramps down much more smoothly. Next, we just need to reverse the clip. So while holding down the Alt key under your keyboard, drag your clip to the side to make a copy and make sure you place your clip right next to the first one. To reverse our second clip, click it and go to Speed/Duration in here. Simply check Reverse Speed and hit OK. Finally, we'll need to render the second clip out too, so make sure it's selected and press Enter. Now when we play this back, we have a really nice looking reverse effect. This is definitely one of my favorite effects. That's it for this tutorial. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next. To get started, I just added a video clip to my timeline that I like to put my text inside, and above that I have a text clip. Now let's begin by going over to the Effects panel and type Track Matte key into the search box. Then drag the Track Matte key effect onto your video clip on the timeline. Next, go over to Effect Control, and then here you'll see your Track Matte key effect you just added next to Matte. Click the drop down and select the video track. Your text is on, mine's on the V2 track, so I'll select Video 2. Okay, and just like that, my video has been placed inside my text. But let's say you want a different color background instead of black. To do this, go over to your project panel and right-click inside. Go to New Item Color. The default setting should match your timeline, so just hit OK. Then simply select the color you want from the color picker box and hit OK. You can give yours a name if you'd like. I'll just name mine White. Okay, and there added our color matte to the project panel. But before we use it, you'll need to drag to select your video and text clip on the timeline, and then drag them up one track. Now drag the white clip below the other clips, and you may want to extend the color clip's duration so it matches your other clips. Finally, let's reselect our video clip and go back over to the track matte. Key in Effect Controls. Since we moved our clips up, our text is now on the V3 track, so we'll have to change the matte to Video 3. Alright, and now I have my video inside my text, but with a white background. While I used a white background, keep in mind that you could put a video or image underneath your video clip, and it works the same way as a white color. That's it for this tutorial. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. To get started, I just added a cut-up video to my timeline that I'd like to add a blur effect. Now let's begin by right-clicking in the project panel and go to New Item Adjustment Layer. Then drag the adjustment layer above your video, and drag the adjustment layer's end so that duration matches your video clips. We're using an adjustment layer because without it, you'd have to add the blur effect to each clip individually. Alright, next, let's go over to the Effects panel and type Gaussian Blur into the search box. Drag the Gaussian Blur effect under your adjustment layer. Then make sure your adjustment layer is selected and go over it to Effect. In here under Gaussian Blur, increase a blurriness to your liking. I'll set mine to 75 check repeat edge pixels to get rid of that black shadow around your video. Okay, this works if you want to simply blur your video out. But let's say instead you'd like to fade the blur in to do this a first position. The playhead to where you want to start blurring your video and set the blurriness to 0. Click the stopwatch next to blurriness to create a starting keyframe. Next, move the playhead to when you'd like the video to be completely blurred by, and then increase the blurriness, all set mine to 75 like before. Okay, now when I play this back, my blur fades in. To adjust the speed of the blur's fade, just drag the second keyframe closer or further to the first one. To blur your video back out, move the playhead to where you'd like to start fading the blur. Click this little circle to create a keyframe for the current blurriness of your video. Then move the playhead to when you want your video to be unblurred by, and click this reset button to create. A keyframe for the blurriness is original value, which is. Okay, now when I play this back, my video not only blurs in, but blurs out as well. That's all for I got today. Make sure to subscribe our channel and turn on the bell icon. Don't forget to watch these videos pop up in the screen to learn Adobe way too easier. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to create this border reveal effect. Okay, to get started, I just added a video clip to my timeline, as well as some texts I'd like to animate my border around. Let's begin by clicking and holding down on the pen tool, and then select the rectangle tool. Use a tool in the preview to drag a rectangle around your text. Then in Effect Controls, go to the shape you just created and uncheck the fill and give it a stroke instead. And I'll just use a Move tool to center mine around my text. Alright, to animate a rectangle, we'll need to go over to the Effects panel and type Crop into the search box. Drag the crop effect onto your graphics clip on the timeline for your rectangle. Now, while holding down the Alt key on your keyboard, drag your graphics clip up to create a copy of it. Do these 2 more times so that you have 4 copies of your graphics clip that has your rectangle and crop effects. For now, let's drag to select the bottom 3 graphics clips and move them to the side so we can focus on the top. Then select your top graphics clip and then Effect Controls. Make sure the playhead is positioned at the beginning of the clip under the crop effect. Drag the bottom's value to the right so that only the top line of the rectangle is showing. Then click the stopwatch next to right to create a starting keyframe and drag the right's value to the right until the line just disappears off the. Then move the playhead to where you want your top line to be finished drawing by and drag the right's value to the left until your line reappears. Okay, now when I play this back, my top line animates. If you want to change the speed of your line, just drag the second keyframe closer or further to the first one. Once you're happy with your line, use these arrows to position the playhead so that it's on your second keyframe. Then drag your second clip to that position, since we want to start drawing the second line right when the first one finishes. Okay, with your second clip selected on the timeline, you'll need to drag its crop's left value to the right until you see just this one vertical line on the. Now for the animation, make sure the playhead is still at the beginning of your second clip, and click the stopwatch next to bottom to create a keyframe. Drag the bottom's value to the right until you can only see the top line. Then move the playhead to where you want your animation to finish. By now, drag the bottom's value to the left, so that is just before where you can see the bottom line to create a second keyframe. And there I have 2 animating lines. Okay, like before, make sure your playhead is positioned on the second keyframe, and then move your third clip from the bottom to that position. For this clip, click the stopwatch next to the left's crop value to create its first keyframe. and drag the left value to the right until you can't see the bottom line anymore. Then move the playhead to where you want the animation done by, and drag the left's value to the left to reveal the bottom line up to where the final vertical line. Okay, and there are third line animates. So once more, put the playhead at this clip's second keyframe and move the final clip to that position. For this one, click the stopwatch next to top to create its first keyframe, and then drag the top's value to the right until the vertical line is gone. Finally, move the playhead to where you want the line to be finished drawing by and drag the top's value to the left to reveal the line. Okay, now when I play this back, I have a nice looking border reveal effect. Keep in mind that you'll need to stretch all these clips out for however long you want the border to show. That's it for this tutorial. Watch these amazing effects by clicking these videos now and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Okay, to get started, I just added a video and audio clip to my timeline that has some footstep audio. I'd like to add echo. Now, let's begin by going over to the effects panel and type surround reverb into the search box. Then drag the surround reverb effect onto your audio clip. Okay, now when I play this back, it has the surround reverb effect, but it's way too quiet. We can't really hear it. So to edit the effect, make sure your audio clip is selected and go over it to Effect Controls under Surround Reverb. Click the Edit button for custom setup, and I'll just move this pop-up a bit so we can see our video in time. The first thing we'll want to do in the pop-up is increase the gain. You'll probably need to increase it quite a bit. This time when I play it back, I can hear the reverb echo, but it's still too quiet. So back on the timeline, right-click your audio clip and select audio gain so that we can adjust the pre-process gain in here. I'm going to adjust my gain by 15. I don't recommend doing more than that for this pre-process gain, since it can cause too much distortion. And now when I play this back, it's much louder. Okay, the last adjustment I'm going to make is decreasing the room size, since this building isn't quite as big as a full-blown. I think that sounds more accurate now. So that's basically all I change, but you can certainly play around with these other settings if you're trying for a more specific sound. It also might be a good idea to try a different impulse preset. I really like how much echoing there is in the cathedral, so I usually stick with. But yeah, that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. To get started, I just added this clip to my timeline that I'd like to add my effect to. Let's begin by using the razor tool to cut out the part of the video you'd like to slow down. Then make sure the part you cut out is selected and use the Ctrl-R keyboard shortcut to open up the speed setting. And here, set the speed to 50%. Then check Ripple. Edit so your slowed down clip doesn't get cut off, and be sure to change the time interpolation to optical flow. This will make your slow motion smooth. Okay, now when I play this back, the queued up part of my clip will play in slow motion, but since optical flow can be rough on your computer, you may need to select the clip and press the Enter key on your keyboard to render it out before it'll play back smoothly. Alright, for this sped out part, first, let's drag our Vone track up to expand it so we can see its preview on our clips. Then on the top left of the last clip, right-click on the gray FX. Go to Timer Mapping Speed now. Select the pen tool from the toolbar and click on the line at the very beginning of that clip. Then reselect the Selection tool and drag the line up to speed up the video clip to your desired amount. I'll set mine to around 250%. Okay, now drag that second half of the marker up here to the right to create your ramp. You also might have noticed this point with two handles in the middle of the ramp. If you drag its top handle to the right, you can create a faster ramp that eases in. And now when we play this back, my clip slows down and then speeds up. That's it for this tutorial. But some of you might be wondering why I didn't use a ramp for this slow motion. Using a ramp wouldn't allow us to use optical flow, which is essential for the smoothness of the slow motion unless you're working with super high frame rates. I also just don't think a ramp for slow motion is really necessary because a sudden change looks really natural to me. However, I do think ramping the speed up is important to make the transition from slow to fast look really. But yeah, I hope you guys like this one. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and see you next time. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to create this text fade transition. Alright, to get started, I just added a video clip to my timeline, as well as some text that I'd like to add a fade transition to. So first off, make sure your text clip is selected on the timeline and go over to Effect Controls. Under the video section, you should see the opacity setting. So go ahead and select the opacity's freeform pen tool, which is what we'll be working with. Okay. Now on the video preview, click near the top left corner. It doesn't have to be exact to create your first point for a large rectangle. Then keep going from left to right to create 3 more points for your large rectangle, and you'll need to click that first point at the end to close the rectangle. Okay, next, let's create our animation. First, position the playhead to where you want to start fading in your text, and click the stopwatch next to mask path to create a starting keyframe. If your mask goes away, you might need to click mask 1 so you can see it again. Now, drag your mask to the side you want your text to fade in from, and make sure it's all the way out of your frame. Then move the playhead to where you want your text to be completely revealed by, and reposition your mask back over your text so that it becomes revealed. Doing this will automatically create a second keyframe and complete the animation. Okay, now if we play this back, we have our animation, but it looks more like a wipe than a fade. To turn it into a fade first, make sure your text clip is still selected. Then in Effect, Controls increase the masks. Feather also at Mind is 700, but you might need to play around with this a bit based on the size of your mask and text. Now this time when I play it back, it looks like a proper fade. It's a bit slow though, so to speed it up, we could just drag our second keyframe closer to the first one. Alright, that's all I have left to show. So as always, thanks for watching and subscribe to our channel if you are new here. We will bring tips and tricks every day make Learn Adobe quick and easy. Watch this video to learn how to create fast and slow cinematic effect in minutes. To get started, I just added this video clip to my timeline, and I'd like to animate a circle around the dog. Let's begin by going over to the toolbar and hold down the cursor on the pen tool. Then select the ellipse tool. Now in your preview, draw a circle around the object you'd like to highlight, and I'm just going to reposition mine a bit so that it covers my dog. Once you have your circle, go over to Effect Controls and open up the shape's properties. Uncheck the fill to turn it off and turn on the stroke. Click the Strokes color box to change the color of your stroke if you want. I'll set mine are red. Then increase the strokes number so that you can see your circle properly. Okay, now that we have our circle around our object, let's animate it by going over to the Effects panel and type clock into the search box. Drag the clock wipe transition out of the beginning of your circles. Graphic clip on the timeline. Okay, now when I play this back, I have an animating circle, but it animates in a strange way because a clock wipe transition animates from the middle of the frame. To fix this, use a selection tool to move the circle to the middle of the frame. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, just make sure it animates properly during playback. Next, right-click your circle's graphic clip on the timeline and select Nest. Give it a name if you want, and click. Alright, now if you double-click your circle in the preview, you can reposition it, and it won't mess up the animation. This works because we simply reposition the nested clip, which moves the clock wipe center with our circle. Okay, and that's it for this tutorial. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. I just added a couple clips to my timeline that I'd like to mess with the colors in. Let's begin by going over to the Effects panel and typing invert into the search box. Then drag the effect on your desired clips. Make sure your clip with the effect is selected and go over to Effect Control. Under Invert, changes the channel to either in phase prominence or quadrature prominence. I think quadrature looks great for this shot because it turns all the foliage purple. For my second clip, I'm going to change the channel to in phase prominence to make the people look kind of alien and blue like I've seen before in music video. I also like how the quadrature channel looks on this clip, giving these women yellow lips and hair. Okay, and that's it for this simple color effect. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create an easy whip pan transition in Premiere Pro. To get started, I just added 2 clips of my timeline that I'd like to add my transition between. Let's begin by right-clicking inside the project panel and going to New Item Adjustment Layer. Then right-click the adjustment layer and select Speed/Duration. I'm working with 24 FPS footage, so I'm going to set mine to 8 frames. If you're working with 60 FPS footage, set it to around 20. Then position your adjustment layer directly above and in the middle of the cut. It helps zoom into your timeline, and with your adjustment layer selected, hold down the Alt key on your keyboard while using the arrow keys to position it exactly in the middle of the. Then go over to the Effects panel and type Push in the search box. Drag the push effect between your 2 clips, then select the transition and go up to Effect Controls. Change the duration to match your adjustment layer. So I'm just going to put 8 frames. Also, if you have a hard time placing your post-transition between your clips, change the alignment here to center at cut. Now to add our blur, go back down to the Effects panel and type Directional Blur into the search box. Drag that effect under your adjustment layer, then in Effect Controls for your adjustment layer, changes the direction to 90, and increase the blur length to 100. Okay, and now when I play this back, I have a nice looking whip pan transition. Alright, and that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. I'm going to show you how to do a fast and easy Luma fade in Premiere Pro. To get started, I just added 2 clips to my timeline. The first clip is an overhead shot of trees, and my second clip is a guide that I'd like to fade into the trees for this effect. It helps if your subject that you like to fit in is darker than the back. Okay, let's begin by positioning the clip you'd like to fit in on top of your first clip. Then go over to the Effects panel, type Gradient into the search box. Drag the Gradient Wipe effect onto your top clip. Then make sure your top clip is selected and go over to Effect Controls. Position the time marker at the start of your top clip on your Gradient Wipe. Change the transition completion to 100%. Then click the stopwatch next to transition completion to create a starting key. Move the time marker to where you want your Luma fade completed by. Change the transition completion to 0% to create an ending keyframe. Lastly, and make sure you check this Invert Gradient checkbox. Okay, and now when I play this back, I have a nice looking Luma fade in Premiere. Thanks for watching in. See you next time. I'm going to show you how to create this cool flash effect. To get started, I just added 2 clips to my timeline that I'd like to add my flash effect between. Let's begin by right-clicking inside the project panel and going to a New Item Adjustment Layer. Then right-click your adjustment layer in the project panel and go to Speed/Duration. I'm going to delete the default 5 seconds and change the last 2 zeros to 15 so that my adjustment layer lasts for 15 frames. If you want faster or slower flash, you can make it last for a few frames more or less. Then direct your adjustment layer under the track above your clips and center it above the cut. If you're having a hard time centering it above the cut, position your time marker at the cut and use this bar down here to zoom into the timeline. Select your adjustment layer, and then while holding down the Alt key on your keyboard, press the right or left arrow keys to nudge the clip so that it's centered over the cut. If you're using a Mac, hold down the Option key while using the arrow keys. Once your adjustment layer is centered over the cut, go over to the Effects panel, type Brightness into the search box. Drag the brightness and contrast effect onto your adjustment layer. Make sure your adjustment layer is selected and go over to Effect Controls, position the time marker at the start of your adjustment layer clip. Click the stopwatch next to both brightness and contrast to create starting keyframes. Move the time marker to the middle of the adjustment layer. Increase the brightness and contrast to 100 to create 2 more keyframes in the middle of your adjustment layer. Then position your time marker at the end of your adjustment layer clip. Change the brightness and contrast back to 0 to create ending keyframes. Okay, and now when I play this back of a nice looking flash effect in Premiere Pro. Thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a clip to my timeline that I'd like to add a vignette. Let's begin by going over to the Project panel and right-clicking inside. Then go to New Item and select Adjustment Layer. Drag the adjustment layer above your clip on the timeline and then extend its serration so that it matches the length of your. Next, go over to the Effects panel and type Circle into the search box. Drag the circle effect onto your adjustment layer. Now go up to Effect Controls where you'll see your circle effect. First, change the circles. Blending mode to Stencil Alpha so you can see your footage in the circle. Then increase the circles or radius generally. If you want a stronger vignette, shoot for between 500 and 1000 and 4 more subtle vignettes that only add black to the corners. Aim for slightly over 1000. Next, click the Feathers drop-down and increase the Feathers outer. I usually aim for between 500 and 600 to get the look I like. Alright, that's looking good. So that's really all there is to it. So thanks for watching and see you next time. I'm going to teach you how to create cinematic titles in Premiere Pro. To get started, I'm just going to right-click in my project panel and then go to New Item, Black Video. Then I'll drag the black video on my timeline and extend it to around 7 seconds. If you can't see the individual seconds like me, drag this bar down here to zoom into your time. Next, click the text tool and type out your desired text. And I'm just going to drag the text clip's duration so that it matches my black video. Make sure your text is selected and go over to Effect Controls. In here, I'm using the Bebas font. I'm also going to set my font size to 90. Then change the tracking setting to 300 to create some spacing between your. To center the text, go over to the Graphic tab up here. Select Edit and then click these 2 alignment buttons to center your text horizontally and vertically. Position your time marker at the start of your text clip and go back up to Effect Controls. In Effect Controls, open up the opacity settings, change the opacity to 0 to create a starting keyframe. We'll view time marker to the 2-second mark and change the opacity to 100 to create a second keyframe. Move the time marker to the 4-second mark and click the circle to create a keyframe at the time marker's current position. Move the time marker to the 6-second mark and change the opacity to 0 to create a 4th keyframe. Okay, and now our text fades in and out, but let's make it look smoother. Drag to select all your keyframes, and then right-click one of them and select Auto Bezier. Okay, now that looks smoother and more professional. Next, let's go up to the motion settings. Reposition the time marker. At the start of your text clip, click the stopwatch next to scale. To create a starting keyframe, move the time marker to your last keyframe's position and increase it to 110. Now our text looks like it's growing slightly. For one final touch, I'm going to go down to the Effects panel and search for Cyan Blur. Drag Giant Blur onto your text layer. Make sure your text layer is selected and then go back up to Effect Controls. Position your time marker at the start of your text clip under Gauss and Blur. Click the stopwatch next to blurriness and change the blurriness to 50 to create a certain keyframe. Move the time marker to the 2-second mark and change the blurriness back to 0. Then move the time marker to the 4-second mark and click this little circle next to blurriness to create another keyframe and 0 blur. Move the time marker to the 6-second mark and change the blurriness back to 50. Okay? And now when I play this back, I have nice looking cinematic texts at blurries, in and out in Premiere Pro. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Okay, to get started, I added a clip to my timeline with fast movement that I like to add some motion blur to. Let's begin by going over to the Effects panel. Then type Time Warp into the search box, and drag the Time Warp effect onto your clip. Now, in Effect Controls, you should see your Time Warp effect. First, let's change its speed to 100 since we're not trying to slow down our footage. Then, further down, you'll see its Motion Blur setting. So check Enable Motion Blur. Next, change the shutter control to manual and increase the shutter angle past 500. The more you increase it, the blurrier it'll be, but it'll also take longer to render. You also might want to increase the shutter samples, which will make your blur smoother. Again, this will also make it take longer to render. If I try to play this back, I'll see that it's way too computationally difficult for Premiere Pro. So what we'll need to do is make sure our clip is selected and simply press the Enter key to render out the effect. It'll take quite a bit of time to render, so this is an effect that works best with short clips. Okay, now when I play this back, I have a really nice looking motion blur effect. But yeah, that's it for this quick tutorial. As always, thanks for watching and catch you in the next one.
I just added a video clip to my timeline that I'd like to add a lower third's name, bar 2. Let's begin by going over to the Graphics tab over in the Essential Graphics panel. Make sure you're in the Browse tab and select my templates in the search box, type thirds, and press. Knowing the results, you'll see a bunch of animated lower thirds titles that you can drag onto your timeline. If you want to overlay the lower thirds title on your video, just drag it under the track above your video to edit the text. Simply select the text tool and click on the text to edit it. Sometimes there will be this little yellow T in the corner of the templates, letting you know that you don't have the required. To get the font just right, click the template and select Sync Missing Fonts. Okay, and now I can add the template to my timeline. Next, I'm going to delete these lower third templates to show you another way to add them in the Essential Graphics panel. Make sure you're in the Browse tab and select Adobe Stock. In here, you'll find even more free lower thirds templates, but from the internet type thirds in the search box and press Enter. Then check the free option. Now simply drag your design, your template above your video clip on the timeline. Some of these will take a little while to load so they can have fancy animations. Also keep in mind that despite these being templates, you can still adjust their duration by dragging the clips and with the selection tool. Okay, and that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching and see you next. To begin, position the playhead to where you want your scrolling text to appear. I'm just going to press the N key on my keyboard to move the playhead to the end of my timeline, where I want to add some credits. Now let's go over to the Graphics panel, so you can see these controls on the side of your preview. Select the Text tool and click anywhere in the preview. Now you can start typing the text you'd like to scroll. I'll just paste some names in here that I already copied. Next, let's use the Selection tool to reposition our text in the frame. In the Essential Graphics panel's Edit tab, you can click these buttons under a line and transform to automatically center your text in the frame. Next, let's click outside of our text to deselect it so that we can see this roll option in the Essential Graphics panel. Now simply check the roll checkbox and you'll have some nice looking scrolling text that starts off screen. To change the speed of your scrolling text, all you have to do is drag the end of your text clip with the selection tool to change its duration. Alright, and that's it for this quick tutorial. Thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a single text clip to my timeline that I'd like to animate changing colors. Let's begin by holding down the Alt key on your keyboard and dragging the text clip to the side to make a copy of it. Then make sure your two text clips are right next to each other. Now select your second text clip and go over to Effect Controls. Open up the text properties, then change the fill color to the color of your choice. Okay, now I have two text clips of different colors. Next, let's go over to the Effects panel and type Cross Dissolve into the search box. Drag the crosses all transition to the cup between your two clips on the timeline. Alright, and now when I play this back, my text animate from white to red, and that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching in. See you next time.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a professional slideshow like this. Okay, to get started, I just added a few images to my timeline, but some of them don't fit in the frame. To fix these, hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and then select all the image clips that don't fit, then right-click one of them, and select Scale to Frame Size. Okay, this looks better now, but there's still these black bars, so let's click in our timeline's gray area to deselect our clips. And then select the first one you'd like to resize. Go up to Effect Controls, and drag the scale's value to the right to increase your image's size. And we'll do the same thing for our other one. Remember, you can easily select your image by moving the playhead over it. Okay, this is looking better now, so let's move on to the blurred background. With the Selection tool, drag to select all your image clips. Then, while holding down the Alt key, drag them up onto the track above to duplicate them. For the next step, we're going to click this eye toggle to hide our top track. Alright, now only select the very first clip on the bottom track, and then go over to the Effects panel. In the search box, type Gaussian Blur, and drag it onto that first clip. Be sure to position the playhead over that clip as well so you can see it as you make your edits. Now, up in Effect Controls, change the blurriness to 400. And make sure you have Repeat Edge Pixels checked to get rid of that black border. To add it to your remaining clips, right-click Gaussian Blur and select Copy. Then drag to select your remaining clips on the bottom track, and use the Ctrl-V keyboard shortcut to paste the blur onto the other clips. Okay, now that we have our blur, let's click the eye toggle again so we can see our top images. Alright, next let's give our images an animation. So select the first image on the top track, and then go up to Effect Controls. In here, make sure the playhead is positioned near the start of the clip. Then change the scale to 80 so that we can see the background behind our image. Now click the stopwatch next to scale to create a starting keyframe. Next, move the playhead to the very end of your clip and increase the scale to 90. This will automatically create a second keyframe. And now when we play this back, we have this nice looking slow zoom animation. To quickly add it to all your other clips, back in Effect Controls, right-click on Motion and select Copy. Then drag to select the rest of your image clips on the top track and use the Ctrl-V keyboard shortcut to paste the zoom effect. Okay, this looks nice, but let's give it a border. Go over to the Effects panel and type Radial Shadow into the search box. Drag the effect onto your first clip on the top track. Now, in Effect Controls, under the Radial Shadow effect, the first thing we'll want to change is the shadow color. I think white borders tend to look better, so let's do white. Then be sure to check Resize Layer so that you can actually see your border. Next, set the opacity to 100 so that the border isn't transparent at all. You also might want to decrease the project distance to around 5 so that the border isn't too thick. And finally, we're just going to drag the light source's first value to the side to reposition it so that it's centered horizontally behind our photo. And then drag the light source's second value to center it vertically. Okay, next up, let's give our border a drop shadow. So back in the effects panel, type drop shadow into the search box. Drag the effect onto your first clip on the top track. Now in effect controls, let's increase the opacity all the way up to 100. Set the distance to 85 so we can actually see it, and put the softness at 135 so it looks like a shadow and not another border. Okay, this looks good, but we still need to apply this border to our other photos. So while holding down the control key, select both your radial shadow and drop shadow in that order, otherwise this won't work right. Then use the Ctrl+C keyboard shortcut to copy them. Now drag to select your other clips on your top track, and use the Ctrl+V shortcut to paste your effects. Okay, this is turning out great, so all that's left to do is add transitions. One last time, go over to the effects panel and type slide into the search box. Right-click the slide transition and select make default transition. Then drag to select all your image clips and go up to sequence, apply video transition, which will add it to all your clips. Okay, this was really efficient, but we don't actually need the transition at the beginning or end, so while holding down the shift key on your keyboard, select those transitions and then use the delete key to get rid of them. We have all these slide transitions now, but a little variety would look nicer. So what we can do is select one of them, and in Effect Controls, use these little arrows to change where it comes in from. Just remember, you have to change the direction for both slide transitions for any given cut. But yeah, that was the last step, so that's all from me. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to create this glitch effect. Okay, to get started, I just added a video clip to my timeline that I like to add a glitch effect to. Let's begin by going over to the effects panel and type glitch into the search box. Drag the VR digital glitch effect onto your clip on the timeline. Next, let's go up to effect controls and under the effect, expand the distortion. Increase the color distortion to 100 so you get this nice looking RGB effect. Then reduce the distortion rate to 0 to get rid of all the artifacts. I'm also going to expand the noise settings and increase the noise strength to add a little graininess to my glitch. Okay, now to animate it, first position the playhead to where you want to start your glitch effect. And click the stopwatch next to master amplitude, which will create a starting keyframe. Since you want to start without any glitch, change the master amplitude to 0. Next, use your keyboard's right arrow key to move the playhead 3 frames forward, and set the amplitude to 100. Then move the playhead another 3 frames forward and set it back to 0. Okay, now when I play this back, we have an animation on our RGB color distortion. Next, let's move the playhead to our first keyframe, and then go up to the video scale setting. Increase the scale to around 115, just so that we can move the video position without it leaving the frame. Now click the stopwatch toggle next to position to create a starting keyframe. Then move the playhead 1 frame forward, and adjust the position of your video in the frame. Doing this will create a second keyframe. It's getting kind of hard to see my keyframes, so I'll just zoom into them a little bit. Next, you'll just need to move the playhead 1 more frame forward, and click this button to reset the video's position. Okay, now just move the playhead forward another frame and reposition the video again. And finally, I'll move it forward another frame and reset the video's position. You could keep doing this for a while if you want a longer glitch effect. But I'm good with this, so I'll play this back to see my video's position moving around in the frame like it's glitching out. You'll probably want more than one glitch though, so for that, you'll just select all your keyframes and copy and paste them a little later on. To make the second glitch more random, you can use these arrows to navigate to the keyframes with the position changes and then readjust their positions. Okay, I really like how this looks now, so that's all for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys found this useful. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this smooth reverse effect. Okay, to get started, I just added this clip to my timeline that I'd like to add my reverse effect to. Now, to begin, drag your video track up so that it's large enough to see the clip's preview image. Then, in the clip's top left corner, right-click the little FX square. Go to Timer Mapping and select Speed. Okay, now you should see this line going through the middle of your clip. So, while holding down the Control key on your keyboard, click roughly in the middle of that line. Doing that will create this dashed line divider. Drag the line on the right side of that dashed divider down to 1%. You might have noticed this little gray marker at the top of the dashed line. You'll need to drag its first half to the start of your clip to begin creating the ramp. And then drag the second half up to where you want to start reversing your video. I'll put mine right after we finish going through the tunnel in my video. Okay, we don't need any of this footage after the second half of our marker, so make a cut at its position and delete the clip after. Alright, now when I play this back, my speed ramps down, but it's not very smooth, so to fix this, let's right-click our clip and go to Speed/Duration. In here, all we're going to do is change the time interpolation to optical flow. Now we have this red bar over our video indicating that it's not going to play back smoothly. So you'll have to make sure your clip is selected and press the Enter key on your keyboard to render the clip. Okay, this time when I play it back, the speed ramps down much more smoothly. Next, we just need to reverse the clip. So while holding down the Alt key on your keyboard, drag your clip to the side to make a copy, and make sure you place your clip right next to the first one. To reverse our second clip, right-click it, and go to Speed/Duration. In here, simply check Reverse Speed and hit OK. Finally, we'll need to render the second clip out too, so make sure it's selected and press Enter. Now when we play this back, we have a really nice looking reverse effect. This is definitely one of my favorite effects. That's it for this tutorial, but before I go, I'd like to thank Envato Elements for being a friend of the channel and sponsoring this video. Today, we've partnered up to give you guys 70% off your first month of Elements. You can check it out by clicking the link below in the description. With Envato Elements, you get unlimited downloads to a massive library of Premiere Pro effects, transitions, sound effects, music, and so much more that you can use in your videos without worrying about copyright. It really is the best deal on the net for assets, so definitely check it out. But that's all for me, so thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. To get started, I just added an audio clip to my timeline that I'd like to make deeper. This voice clip will be deeper. Let's begin by going over to the effects panel. Type pitch into the search box. Drag the pitch shifter effect that isn't obsolete onto your audio clip. Then make sure your audio clip is selected and go up to Effect Controls. Under Pitch Shifter, click the Edit button next to Custom Setup. Lower the amount of semitones by dragging the slider to the left. You also want to make sure High Precision is selected and Use Appropriate Default Settings is checked. Then just close out of the window and play back your audio.
This voice clip will be deeper.
Alright, and that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a clip to my timeline that I would like to zoom into by using a jump cut. Let's begin by positioning the time marker to where you want to zoom in with your jump cut. Then use the razor tool to make a cut at the time marker's position. Move the time marker to where you want your zoom jump cut to end. Make a cut at that position. Using the selection tool, select the middle part of your clip between the cuts you just made and go over to Effect Controls. And it's also a good idea to move your time marker over the middle of your clip so that you can see it as you edit it. In Effect Controls, increase the scale of the clip to your desired amount. And you also might want to adjust the position so that your zoom is centered where you'd like it. Okay, and now when I play this back, I have a nice looking zoom jump cut in Premiere Pro. Thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a video clip to my timeline that I'd like to add my dust effect to. I also imported a video with dust particles. If you'd like to use the same video, I provided a link in the description, otherwise any video like this from YouTube will do. Okay, let's begin by dragging our dust video onto the track above our video clip on the timeline. Then select your dust clip on the timeline and go over to Effect Controls. Under Opacity, change the blend mode to Screen. Okay, and now when I play this back, I have a nice looking dust effect in Premiere Pro. If you need the dust effect to last longer, just drag another copy of it after your first clip on the timeline. Alright, and it's that easy. Thanks for watching and see you next time. To get started, I just added a still image to my timeline that I'd like to add the Ken Burns effect to. Let's begin by making sure the playhead is positioned at the start of your image clip on the timeline. Then select your image clip and go over to Effect Controls. In Effect Controls, click the stopwatch next to Position and Scale to create starting keyframes for the animation. Then move the playhead to where you want the Ken Burns effect to end. Drag the scale's value to the right to zoom into your image however much you want. Then drag the position's X and Y values to the part of the image you'd like to emphasize. Alright, as you can see, Premiere Pro created 2 new keyframes for position and scale. Now when I play this back, I have a nice looking Ken Burns effect. And that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Let's begin by dragging our clip onto the timeline that we'd like to color grade. If you select your clip by default, the Lumetri color panel should show up, but if you're missing it, go to Window and select Lumetri Color. Now in the Lumetri Color panel, open up the Basic Correction tab. Near the top you'll see an Auto button that you can use to automatically color grade your video. Okay, I think this did a really nice job, but we could use this intensity slider to make adjustments to the automatic correction as well. For this, I actually think the high intensity does look better. But if you want to ramp up the intensity even more, you could use the contrast slider down here. If you do add more contrast, be very subtle about it because it can get rid of details, which you probably don't want. Lastly, if you want to compare your changes to the original, you can click this checkbox next to Basic Correction to toggle your color grading on and off. But yeah, that's it for this super quick tutorial. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time. Okay, in Premiere, I just added a video clip to my timeline, as well as a text clip above that. First, let's create our cursor by right-clicking inside the project panel and going to Add New Item Black Video. Then simply drag the black video above your text clip on the timeline and make sure it's lined up with it. Now with your black video selected, go over to Effect Controls and turn off Uniform Scale, then decrease the scale width to 1.5 or however thick you want your cursor to be. Next, decrease the scale height until the cursor is just a little bit taller than your text. Okay, now just drag the position's first value to the left to move the cursor to the start of your text. And you might want to adjust the position's second value a bit so that it's more centered. Moving on to the animation. Let's go over to the effects panel and type that linear wipe into the search box. Then drag the linear wipe effect onto your text clip on the timeline. Make sure your text clip is selected and go over to Effect Controls in here. Start by positioning the playhead at the beginning of the clip. Now click the stopwatch next to Transition Completion to create your first keyframe. Then set the transition completion to 100%. Next, move the playhead at roughly halfway through your text clip and set the transition completion to 0%, which will create your ending keyframe. Okay, when I play this back, we have our wipe, but it's going the wrong way to fix is just change the wipe angle to 270. Now it's going the right way, but it looks more like a wipe than a typing effect. So we'll need to drag the second keyframe in closer to the first one to speed it up. You might have to play around a bit with the speed to find the sweet spot. I think one letter revealed for every 2 frames is a good speed gain for next. Let's animate our cursor by first selecting the black video clip on the timeline. And in the effect controls, make sure the playhead is positioned at the start of your clip. Now click the stopwatch next to position to create a starting keyframe, and then move the playhead to when your text finishes its reveal. Okay, now drag the position's first value to the right until the black cursor is a little after your text. This will automatically create a second keyframe. Now we have a rough version of our typing effect, but our cursor isn't quite matching up with the wipe. So in Effect Controls, you can use the keyboard right and left arrow keys to scrub through this and adjust the position's first value as needed. You basically don't want letters to be revealed before the cursor, and you also don't want the cursor to get too far ahead. Mine actually didn't need too many adjustments, but don't be surprised if you need a few more. Alright, and now this looks much more like someone is typing, but it'd be even more realistic if we had a blinking cursor. For this district, the front of the black clip to extend its duration for however long you want it to blink for before you start typing. Then cut your black video or right where it lines up with your text clip, and just make a cut every 3 or 4 frames. Now starting from where you made your first cut, delete every other cut out chunk of black video, and I'll get rid of this little extra piece at the end too, since it's not 4 frames like the others. Okay, cool. Now my cursor blinks before the typing. To make it blink at the end as well, you'll just need to move the playhead to where the cursor animation ends and make a cut at that position. Now make a cut every few frames for as long as you want it to blink for, and we can delete this ending part since we don't need to do blink this long. Then like before, just delete every other cutout chunk. Okay, and if I play this back one last time, we can see our completed at typewriter effect. So as always, thanks for watching and see you guys next time. I just added an image to my timeline that I'd like to draw a line on. To draw your line, select the pen tool from the toolbar. Then in the preview, click to create a starting point for your line, and click somewhere else to create the line's ending point to get a perfectly horizontal line. I'll just drag my second point down a bit. Okay, now we can see where our line is, but it's not being outlined. To outline our line, expand the shape's properties in Effect Controls. Under Appearance, turn off the fill and turn on the stroke. Then increase the stroke's value to make your line thicker. All right, there I have a simple line, but let's say you want to animate it. To do that, go back to the shape and Effect Controls and expand its scale. Then uncheck Uniform Scale. Next, position the playhead to where you want to start drawing your line. Then click the stopwatch next to Horizontal Scale to create a starting keyframe, and then set the horizontal scale to 0. Now move the playhead to when you want to finish drawing your line, and increase the scale back to 100 to create a second keyframe. All right, there, I have a nice looking animated line when this is played back. To change the speed of your line's animation, just drag the second keyframe closer or further from the first one. If you want a diagonal or vertical line, I recommend still starting off with the horizontal one and then changing its rotation to fit your needs. This is because creating a diagonal line at the start will create some animation problems when you try to animate at scale. Finally, if you want to change the direction your line animates in, just drag the anchor points of value so that the blue point is sitting on the other side of the line. Alright, and that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.